Just ahead on American Black Journal, a conversation about preserving black spaces in Detroit. I'll talk with the author of a newspaper column about how change is impacting the city's black population. Plus, a major makeover for the shrine of the Black Madonna Bookstore and Cultural Center. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Etzel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, Nissan Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. My first guest wrote a column in the Detroit Free Press that has a lot of people talking. Detroiter Eric Thomas wrote about the urgent need to preserve Detroit's black spaces as Midtown and downtown and some other areas of the city undergo major changes. He says there's a lot at stake for African Americans in Detroit. I'd like to welcome Eric Thomas, senior partner at Saga Marketing, to American Black Journal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So let's start with this. Detroit is a city that is more than 80% African American. Almost all of our leadership is African American, both at the political and the community level. And yet, as you point out in your piece, it's a city where if you're African American, you can feel unwelcome in some places. Talk about what inspired you to notice that and then to write about it.
I mean, viscerally, I think I had the feeling and the gut reaction,
Yeah.
right? You find yourself in places where it looks so different. I mean, over the last 5 or 6 years, I grew up in a city where you could go anywhere and you could feel welcome, not about just the complexion, but in the tonality and the way people spoke and the way people carried themselves and the types of music. Now you can go in places and it feels almost entirely foreign. As people build new businesses to attract their friends and their family, they come from other places. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like they've imported other cities' culture right into the heart. But those are cities that don't have the demographic makeup. And so intentionally or unintentionally, you feel neglected, disregarded.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the how do people treat people who are unlike them, right? If you skip all of Detroit, you come from Oakland County, you skip all of Detroit, land in the middle, you're going to act like an Oakland County person. But we have historically felt uncomfortable in the region around us. And so now the region around us is inside of us.
Is inside the city. So let's be clear. You're not saying that we should be unwelcome in the way that we respond to new people who want to be here. You're not saying that new people shouldn't come to Detroit, shouldn't want to be part of the place. You're talking about the way in which that happens and the sort of necessary attention to where you are, who you're around, and whose culture you might be having an impact on.
I think it's one of those, I think if you were to go to another country, if you went to India, and you were in a party and there were no Indian people there, I think you start asking questions. Am I doing something to make the Indian people feel uncomfortable?
Right.
Detroit is almost Africa, right? It's 80% African American. If you're in a place, and I don't even say you have to have 80% black people in that space, but if you have 2 black people out of 100 people, you have to start asking questions of yourself. What am I doing to make this space not welcoming? It's easy to not think about that because it kind of looks like where you come from, but you're not at home, mm-hmm. right? And mm-hmm. so going into someone's house, you kind of wonder where their family is. That's kind of what I'm thinking. It is strange to me if I go to a place where I know there is a type of culture, I kind of want that culture. And it feels weird to say you love Detroit grit, you love Detroit hustle, as though Detroit grit and hustle doesn't come from a type of people. Detroit is not a gritty urban landscape. Detroit is full of gritty urban people that have had their mark on the city. If you love grit, if you love hustle, if you love creativity, if you love sound and music and soul, you love people, not buildings. And so in order to preserve the rich cultural, spiritual history of the place, you have to have those people in there.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say preserve black spaces, talk a little more about what you think that means, how we do that, and how that might change this dynamic that we see unfolding.
So I think there's two different things to think about, right? There are places that are culturally black, right? You talk about like Shrine of the Black Madonna, you talk about Baker's Jazz Cafe. These are places that are culturally, richly black. And then you have other places where they might be new, but they're in a city that is 80% black, and so they should have at least appreciation for the types of people that were there before and are still there. If there are over 200,000 middle-class Detroiters, which there are, your spaces don't hold 200,000 people, so there could be at least a representation of that community. It's not saying, like, Detroiters can't afford what you have. There are Detroiters. And so when we talk about preserving spaces, patronizing, supporting, celebrating, including is important.
Yeah.
And then when we have new places, what are you doing that reflects back into the community to say, we love you, and it has to be more than just Motown. I think everybody's excuse, they just turn on some Motown and assumes that's all you need.
Yeah, we'll show up, right?
It's like, bro, that was the 60s, right? There are things that have happened since.
So in these new spaces, you do see a lot of folks struggling with the idea of where they are and who should be there. If you had advice for a store owner, a restaurant owner in these sort of new parts of the city with new people, a quick list of things that you thought they could be doing different, what would it look like?
I think, you want to hire from the community, so the people who are the face of your organization connect with the community. I think that has to be more than security guards. I think people have decided that the only way they're going to include black people in their spaces is get black security guards.
Merchandise,
right?
right?
Keep your cousins out of here, right? It's like, chill. I think that I think one of the main things to change the tone of a space is to change the music in the space, right? Like, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? Is there hustle? Is there bustle? And then get with people who have had long-standing understanding of how to make people feel welcome. We have hair salons. We have places like Savannah Blue that have incredible staff that come right out of the community. You can't tell me you can't hire and create great service when I have seen it work. So at some point, you need to create there is a restaurant association, right? There are co-ops of stores and facilities. The question is, who is doing it well? How do we create collaboration with those people? And then how do we share a workforce that makes us all feel included? And I think it really comes down to that, so we can have real conversations, real banter, and feel really safe inside of those places.
Yeah, I also feel like one of the things that needs to happen is that some of the new folks and new businesses that are locating in the city need to experience the parts of the city that they're not experiencing, right?
Yeah.
Don't just skip over everything and come to downtown or midtown. Maybe go to Livernois, maybe go to the east side, maybe go far west, and try to experience a little more of the city so that you're more comfortable with it to begin with.
We could do a good job as Detroiters of welcoming people in, and talking to people and connecting with them and sharing our cultural resource, right? For us, our primary goal has to be to integrate successfully if it's going to happen. We've had a lot of situations. We've seen it all over the country. When an area begins to gentrify, quote unquote, which I think is not exactly what's happening in Detroit. There's space for 2 million people. There's 600,000 people here. But when those communities start to gentrify, especially in the city with the rate of renters that Detroit has, the people, even as the property values rise, the people will not benefit, and then they will have to leave. And so though you say, oh, we're trying to make this place better, the question that we always ask, because we've seen it for the last 100 years, is for who?
Yeah, right.
And you should ask the question as well if you're making the city better.
Yeah. All right, Eric Thomas, great piece, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It is an honor.
All right, up next, new life for the Shrine of the Black Madonna Bookstore and Cultural Center. But first, here's a 1993 Detroit Black Journal conversation about that historic Detroit landmark on Livernois Avenue.
The shrines of the Black Madonna cultural centers and bookstores are the largest black bookstores in the world. And I say that because we are the only bookstore that you can come to and find such a tremendous selection of books related to the black experience in one place. We don't have a few books on a wall someplace saying African American. When you walk into the store, the total store is African American. Everything about the store, and we are more than just a bookstore. We are a cultural center. Culture is how you dress, how you talk. You know that black people talk a certain way. How you relate to each other. Basically, that's what culture is. People don't always come here just to buy. We've had people that will stop in from work just to be here, to be in the atmosphere, because we strive to maintain like a congenial, friendly, warm atmosphere. And people will just stop, they'll say, just to cool out before they go home after they get off from work, because it's so pleasant here to them, and to look at the art and browse through the books. It makes us feel good, and it also makes us feel that we have a tremendous responsibility to maintain and to uphold for our community. We hope that our being here represents to other black people the fact that they can come together and work together to build an institution that will serve the community's needs, that you can build economic-based power within your own community if you come together knowing that working together, hard work, knowing that you can do this and doing it. And we're hoping that, I believe we've had some impact on the community, because we have, at first, remember in 69, 70, the early 70s, there was a proliferation of little black boutiques and bookstores, and they all went out of business. We're the only bookstore and culture center that stayed, but now they're coming back. Now people are beginning to form them again. And I think they've learned through the years, through looking at us, that it just takes hard work and perseverance, that you just have to stay with it and reinvest within.
The Shrine of the Black Madonna Bookstore and Cultural Center was forced to shut down about 2 years ago because of declining sales. Now, the Detroit landmark on Livernois Avenue is scheduled to reopen next summer after a major renovation. This is a drawing of the new building designed by Hamilton Anderson Associates. In addition to being a retail space, it will serve as a cultural hub for the community. Groundbreaking is planned for next month. Here to tell us more are Candia Milton, who is project coordinator and minister at the Shrine of the Black Madonna #1, Rhonda Smith, an Emerging Voices journalist who wrote about the development project in Detour, Detroit, and Rainey Hamilton, who is principal at Hamilton Anderson Associates. Welcome all of you to
Thank you,
American
Stephen.
Black.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Candia, I'll start with you. Talk about the effort to get this going again. I grew up not too far from there, just south of Davison on Livernois. I remember this institution back way when I was a kid. Talk about what happened to close it down and the effort to get it reopened.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to come and talk about this project. We're excited about it. The Shrine of the Black Madonna. Shrine of the Black Madonna Cultural Center and Bookstore opened in 1970. And for the better part of almost 50 years, it was a space whose mission was to raise the cultural and economic and political awareness of the African American community here in Detroit. And when we opened at that time, it was very innovative. It was futuristic, if you would, as an inviting space. Everything from cultural artifacts to books and clothing. And so access to it was, it was accessible to the community. But what's happened over the years is the way people buy books and the way people buy clothes, the way people buy artifacts, has changed.
It's changed a lot,
It's
right?
It's changed dramatically. And so what we've done over the last couple of years is, we've taken a step back, reflected on our impact in the community, and now we're sitting down and revisioning how we utilize the space to make it more accessible and significant in today's environment.
Yeah.
And so we've engaged Hamilton Anderson in that process to help us reimagine the space so that we can be viable in the community for the next 50 plus years.
Yeah. You are working on lots of different projects around the city. Talk about the reimagining of this space and how the physical space and the physical sort of layout of it plays into that design.
Yeah, Stephen, thanks for having me this morning. We're really excited because we get a chance to do what we do, which is to breathe life back into a building that's been vacant for many years. And the building has great bones. So what we're looking to do is update the systems and give it a brand new look, create flexible space that can be used for a number of things, for book launches, wedding receptions, discussions that are important to the community. So we're really excited to be able to put a fresh new look on how the building is going to appear.
Yeah. Talk about the piece that you wrote in Detour about the new center.
So my job as a Detour Detroit Fellow is to write about things that are happening in my community. And I live in Russell Woods, where you grew up. Right. And
well,
so
I was across. My grandparents.
Okay,
lived in Russell
your
Woods.
grandparents.
I was in
Okay.
the other rougher part of Detroit.
Well, I've been there 20 years, but a lifelong Detroiter,
Yeah.
and have always utilized and gone to the Shrine of the Black Madonna. So when it closed, after having just weekend hours, I was curious what's going on. So when I was charged to be able to find out what's happening in my community, that was the first story that I started to investigate. Is it going to open up again?
Right.
I saw the electricity still on, so I knew that it just wasn't bottomed out.
Right.
But something may be going on there. So I reached out, and I understand I broke the story.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Talk about that community, though. It's changing a lot. Russell Woods is changing right
Yes.
now. We're trying to make change in the home that my family lived in when I was born on Tuxedo, just across Livernois from there. We've got a major development coming. The Carpenters Union is building this training center, $30 million over there. It's going to be a different space.
A lot of
soon.
space. We've been meeting, and I'm very active with the neighborhood association, so we've been meeting a lot with city officials to revitalize Dexter Avenue and to just change the spaces, not just the landscape, but the homes. And there's been a lot of changes in terms of racial mix. So we have a lot of Caucasians moving into the community. As a matter of fact, I had a community conversation a few weeks ago about whites coming into the community and how we can live well together as the landscape changes. But we definitely need cultural institutions still, like the Shrine of Black Madonna.
Talk about the Shrine's role now and how it might be different or the same than it was at sort of the height of its activity.
Yeah, and so the mission will always continue to be what it is, and that is, self-determination for our community and the people that live within the community, but also creating a space that we can be unapologetically who we are as African Americans. We have always been a self-sustaining institution. We've never went out and sought grants, and that was always important to us because then we could say whatever it is we needed to say, and the community could come into the space and organize in the way that it needed to organize in order to achieve self-determination as a people. And so, it was sustainable on its own economically. The community was always supported it, even when, Black culture wasn't a trend, we existed.
Right.
In fact, I would argue that we created the trend
of black culture,
and made it popular and made it normal.
Yeah.
You know, when we first opened up, it was new, it was a novelty. Our ability to exist over the last, better part of the last 50 years was a statement about our commitment to making our culture the norm.
Yeah, yeah. You are working, as I said, in a number of different spaces, trying to sort of maintain this city and its institutions and breathe new life into spaces that have gone dark. Talk about how important that work is in different parts of the city. I mean, you guys seem to be everywhere these days.
Yeah, Stephen, I think we have to continue to strive to make our communities walkable. We have to create buildings and places that are inviting to all. And so we're looking forward to bringing that kind of life to the shrine, making the building very inviting, open, transparent, so people will feel welcome to come in and engage.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. The conversation that you had in Russell Woods
Yes.
about race was interesting to me because when my grandparents moved our family to that neighborhood in the 50s, they were one of the first black families ever to live in Russell Woods. By the time I was born in 1970, it was almost all African American. Now it seems like it's going to change again. I mean, this is kind of a cycle, I think, in Detroit and in neighborhoods.
Yes, it has changed quite a bit. And again, earlier you mentioned about we're not saying we don't want you here, and that's what the conversation wasn't about. We weren't saying we don't want you here, but just come in and really be fully invested in the community. Don't just live here, but engage one another, not just people who look like you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the Shrine is one of the places that people ought to get to know,
Exactly.
regardless of their cultural background. Right?
And culture is a broad term, right? And so the intermingling of cultures and having conversations and having a safe place and space to have those conversations is important. And that's what we have historically been and will continue to be as we reprogram the space to make it more accessible. Just this past weekend, speaking of something actually that was germane to what we did historically, there was a discussion with an attorney around social justice and environmental justice. Ben Crump, I think it was, who came to town. Yeah. Not only is it important for him to have a book signing in a space, but to have the larger conversation, around social justice and its intersection with the environment. And as you know, he went to Flint, and they did some rallies and organizing in Flint around this very issue. And so having those conversations about how to be inclusive, having a safe place to have those conversations, having conversations about larger issues that are impacting our community is really what we are about and will continue to be about going forward.
All right. Well, congratulations on the project, and thanks for coming.
Sure. Our pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
All right, that's our program for today. Go to AmericanBlackJournal.org for more information on our guests and to check out past episodes. And you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.